You still remember the day you quit your job, not because it was the happiest day of your life, because it was one of the scariest. For years, you had talked about starting a business. Friends heard about it, family heard about it, you had read books about it, watched videos about it, imagined it 1,000 times, but talking about something and actually doing it are two very different things. Dreams are comfortable, reality is not. The morning you hand in your resignation, you sit in your car for almost 20 minutes before walking inside. Your hands are sweating, your stomach feels strange, part of you wants to turn around and go home, part of you wants to pretend none of this ever happened, because deep down you know exactly what you are giving up. A guaranteed paycheck, predictability, security, a future you can understand, and you are trading it all for uncertainty. Nobody can tell you if it is going to work. Nobody can promise success. Nobody can guarantee anything. That is what makes entrepreneurship different. You willingly walk into the unknown. The first few days feel incredible. You wake up without an alarm. No commute, no office politics, no meetings that should have been emails, no manager asking for updates. The freedom feels amazing. You start building immediately. Website, logo, social media pages, business cards, marketing plans, sales plans, growth plans. Every day feels productive. Every day feels like progress. You picture where you will be in 5 years. A beautiful office, a successful company, employees, customers, freedom. You imagine telling people the story of how it all started. What you do not realize is that the hardest part has not begun yet. The first month ends, no customers. That is okay, you expected that. The second month ends, still no customers. A little disappointing, but understandable. The third month ends, nothing. Now you are starting to worry. Your savings account is smaller than it was 3 months ago. You tell yourself that is normal. It is an investment. Every business takes time. At least that is what everyone says. The problem with entrepreneurship is that motivation starts disappearing long before the bills do. At first you are excited, then you are hopeful, then you are concerned, then you are stressed. And eventually, if things do not improve, fear starts taking over. Every morning begins with the same routine. Coffee, check emails, nothing, check analytics, nothing, check bank account, less than yesterday. You start refreshing your inbox dozens of times a day, almost as if a customer might magically appear if you look often enough. They do not. One afternoon, you receive your first inquiry. You read the email 3 times, then 5, then 10. You can barely believe it. A real customer, not a friend, not family. A stranger. You spend 2 days preparing the quote. You check every word, every number, every detail. When you finally send it, you feel proud. Then you wait. The next day feels like a week. The day after feels even longer. Then the email arrives. Accepted. You got the job. You stare at the screen. Smiling. For the first time since starting the business, you feel validated. Somebody chose you. Somebody believes in what you are building. That night you celebrate. Not because of the money, because of what the money represents. Proof. The next year is a roller coaster. A customer arrives, then disappears. Another arrives, then disappears. Business feels unpredictable. 1 month is fantastic. The next is terrifying. You learn something they never teach in school. Revenue and cash flow are not the same thing. 1 month you send invoices worth thousands. The next month you are eating instant noodles because nobody has paid them. You start understanding why so many entrepreneurs look exhausted. It is not the work. It is the uncertainty. Then something happens that nobody warned you about. A customer refuses to pay. You have completed the work, delivered everything, met every deadline. The invoice is due. Then overdue, then very overdue. Your emails become more desperate. Your phone calls become more frequent. Nothing. You eventually realize the truth. You are not getting paid. Months of work vanish, just like that. The anger is overwhelming. You replay every conversation in your head, every warning sign you missed. Every mistake you made. You do not sleep much that week. Eventually things improve, slowly, painfully, customer by customer, referral by referral. The business starts gaining momentum. You finally experience your first profitable quarter, then your first profitable year. For the first time, the numbers are moving in the right direction. You breathe easier. You sleep better. The future starts looking brighter. Then the dream client arrives. A huge company. The biggest opportunity you have ever seen. You spend weeks preparing. Meetings, presentations, research, planning. You want everything perfect. When they finally award you the contract, you feel unstoppable. You tell your family, you tell your friends, you spend the entire weekend smiling. This is it, your breakthrough, the moment everything changes. And in many ways it does. The workload explodes. Emails arrive around the clock. Requirements constantly change. Deadlines become tighter. Expectations become higher. The money is good. The stress is even better. Soon you are working 14-hour days, then 16, then whatever it takes. You stop exercising, you stop seeing friends, you stop taking breaks. The business becomes your entire life. People look at your success and feel jealous. They do not see the sacrifices. One afternoon you decide to reward yourself. You buy something expensive. Maybe it is a watch. Maybe it is a car. Maybe it is something you have wanted for years. It feels amazing for a while, then reality returns. Success is not permanent. Bills still exist. Customers still leave. Problems still appear. Entrepreneurship has a way of humbling people, no matter how successful they become. A few years later, you hire your first employee. The night before they start, you are terrified. Not because you are worried about them, because you are worried about yourself. Can you afford this? Can you lead someone? Can you build something bigger than yourself? When they arrive on their first day, everything changes. For the first time, the business is not just about you anymore. Somebody else depends on it. Their rent, their groceries, their family, their future. The responsibility feels heavy, but meaningful. As the company grows, new problems appear. The problems never disappear. They simply evolve. When you are starting out, you worry about getting customers. Later, you worry about keeping them. Then you worry about employees, then culture, then systems, then competition. Every level comes with a new challenge. Every victory unlocks a bigger problem. Then disaster strikes again. Your biggest customer leaves, not because you did anything wrong. They simply decide to move in a different direction. Years of revenue disappear. Just like that, you stare at the numbers, trying to understand what happened, trying to understand how quickly things can change. A few months earlier, you felt secure. Now you are worried again. That is entrepreneurship. You never truly arrive. You never truly relax. There's always another challenge waiting. The debt starts growing. At first it is manageable, then uncomfortable, then alarming. You tell yourself it is temporary, a bridge, a short-term solution, but months become years. The balance keeps growing. You stop talking about it, because talking about it makes it real. From the outside, everything looks fine. Inside, you are carrying stress nobody sees. Then comes the lowest point. You sit alone late at night. The office is empty. The lights are off. The numbers do not work, no matter how many times you calculate them. You think about shutting everything down, starting over, getting a job, returning to certainty. The idea feels strangely comforting. For the first time in years, giving up sounds easier than continuing. That night changes something. You realize nobody is coming. No investor, no miracle, no lucky break. If the business survives, it will survive because of you. If it fails, it will fail because of you. The responsibility is terrifying, but also empowering, because it means you still have control. The next morning, you begin again. Sales calls, marketing, networking, learning, improving. You become obsessed with growth, not business growth, personal growth, because you have finally realized something important. Businesses grow when people grow, and your business can never outgrow you. Months pass, then years. The improvements compound, customers stay longer, referrals increase, revenue becomes predictable. The debt starts shrinking, slowly at first, then faster. One day you look at the balance and realize something. You are almost free. After years of stress, years of worry, years of sacrifice, you are finally winning. The day you make the final debt payment feels strange. You expected excitement, celebration, relief. Instead, you mostly feel grateful. Grateful you did not quit. Grateful you survived. Grateful you kept going during the moments when continuing felt impossible. The business continues growing. More employees, more customers, more opportunities, more responsibility. One afternoon, years later, you walk through the office. People are working, customers are being helped, phones are ringing, projects are moving forward, everything looks normal. But you stop for a moment, because suddenly you remember the car where you sat before handing in your resignation, the empty inbox, the shrinking savings account, the unpaid invoice, the sleepless nights, the debt, the fear, the moments you nearly quit and you realize something. None of this existed back then. Years ago, it was just an idea, a risky idea, a terrifying idea, an idea that almost failed 100 times. But it survived, not because you were smarter than everyone else, not because you were lucky, not because success was guaranteed. It survived because every time life knocked you down, you got back up. Again, and again, and again. People eventually call you successful. They see the results, they see the business, the office, the customers, the freedom. What they do not see is the journey, the years spent doubting yourself, the years spent carrying stress nobody understood, the years spent sacrificing comfort for possibility, because success is not built during the good times. It is built during the difficult ones. It is built when you are scared, when you are uncertain, when you are exhausted, when quitting seems reasonable and continuing seems impossible. That is where businesses are built. That is where character is built. That is where lives change. And one day after everything you have experienced, you understand the truth. The business was never the biggest thing you built. You were. The business made you money. The struggle made you resilient. The business created opportunities. The struggle created wisdom. The business changed your circumstances. The struggle changed who you became. And in the end, that is the real reward. Not the revenue, not the customers, not the success. The person staring back at you in the mirror. The person who refused to quit. The person who kept going. The person who built a business and in the process built themselves.